Part 1. The Diplomat's Fall. The conference hall stretched across 300 meters of polished crystal, reflecting the light of 7 different suns through the station's massive windows. Representatives from 42 worlds sat in their designated sections, their forms as varied as the stars themselves. Some breathed oxygen, others methane. Some stood on legs, others floated in containment fields. But all of them watched the human at the center podium with careful attention. Ambassador Hyunwoo stood quietly, his silver hair catching the light. He wore the simple gray uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps, without medals or decorations. He did not need them. Every being in this chamber knew who he was and what he had accomplished. For 20 years, he had walked between empires on the edge of war and turned them toward peace. The galaxy called him the bridge builder, though he never used the title himself. Today, he had done it again. The territorial boundaries are agreed, Hyunwoo said, his voice calm and clear through the translation matrix. The Vren Collective will maintain control of the Kessler sector. The Lotus Empire will receive exclusive mining rights to the Andara Belt for 50 standard years. Both parties have signed the accord. The insectoid representative of the Vren Collective clicked its mandibles in approval. The crystalline form of the Lotus Ambassador chimed with satisfaction. 2 empires that had been ready to burn entire systems now sat at peace. Another war avoided, another billion lives saved. Hyunwoo stepped down from the podium. He felt tired. These negotiations had taken 3 months and he was not as young as he once was. His back ached and he wanted nothing more than to return to Earth and see his grandchildren. But there would be other disputes, other wars to prevent. There always were. As he walked toward the exit, he noticed the Drexar delegation watching him. Overlord Carix, the military commander of the Drexar sovereignty, stood like a statue carved from dark stone. His species resembled the ancient reptiles of Earth, with scaled skin and cold eyes that never blinked. Those eyes followed Hyunwoo across the chamber. Something felt wrong. On the lunar base, Captain Mirai reviewed the fleet reports. 23 ships currently on patrol, all systems running smoothly. Earth's defensive perimeter had not been challenged in 60 years. The galaxy was at peace, and humanity's role in maintaining that peace had earned them respect across countless worlds. Her communication console chimed. A priority message from the Galactic Council station. She opened it, expecting routine diplomatic updates. Instead, her blood turned cold. All Earth vessels are ordered to hold position. Ambassador Hyunwoo has been detained on charges of espionage and war crimes. A council vote will determine his fate. This is not a request. Any aggressive action will be considered an act of war against the Council. Mirai read the message 3 times, certain there had been a mistake. War crimes, Hyunwoo? The man who had spent his entire life preventing wars? It made no sense. She immediately contacted Earth Command. Admiral Taman appeared on her screen within seconds. The old soldier's face was carved from stone, his jaw tight. "You've seen it," he said. It was not a question. "Sir, this has to be a mistake. Ambassador Hyunwoo would never—" "I know," Taman interrupted. "We're investigating. The Drexar have presented evidence to the Council. Documents, recordings, data files. They claim Hyunwoo has been feeding Earth classified information from Council sessions, giving us unfair advantages in trade and territory negotiations. That's insane. He's the most honest man I've ever known. I know that. You know that. But the evidence looks real, Mirai, very real. Someone went to a lot of trouble to forge it." Mirai felt her hands clench into fists. "Then we prove it's false. We demand a proper investigation." Taman's expression darkened. "Earth's government is doing exactly that. But the Council is moving fast, too fast. The vote happens in 6 hours, 6 hours. Not enough time to prove anything. Not enough time to save him." In his detention cell on the Council station, Hyunwoo sat calmly. He had reviewed the evidence against him. It was masterwork forgery so perfect that even he could almost believe it was real. The Drexar had planned this carefully, choosing documents and recordings that would be difficult to verify in time. They had set a perfect trap. He knew why they had done it. The Drexar sovereignty had been expanding aggressively for decades, claiming territory through military threat and political pressure. Every time they tried, Hyunwoo had stood in their way with words instead of weapons, building coalitions that forced them to back down. He had cost them dozens of systems, trillions in resources. He had made them look weak. Now they would make him look guilty. The door to his cell opened. A Drexar guard gestured for him to stand. "The Council is ready to vote." Hyunwoo stood and straightened his uniform. He walked with his head high, his steps steady. Whatever came next, he would face it with dignity. That was all he had left. The council chamber was full. Every representative had come to witness this moment. Hyunwoo stood in the center as the charges were read aloud. Espionage, treason against the council, conspiracy to manipulate interstellar politics for Earth's benefit. The evidence was presented, and he was not allowed to speak in his own defense. The Drexar had made sure of that, citing council security protocols. Earth's representative protested, arguing for more time, for a proper investigation. Other voices joined in. The Vren, the Lotus, and a handful of smaller species spoke in Hyunwoo's defense. But many more stayed silent, afraid of Drexar retaliation. The vote was called. 7 species voted to hand Hyunwoo over to Drexar justice. 4 voted against. The rest abstained. It was done. Hyunwoo stood perfectly still as the verdict was announced. He would be transferred to the Drexar homeworld to face trial under their laws. Everyone in the chamber knew what that meant. Drexar trials for war criminals had only one outcome. Earth's representative demanded to speak with him before the transfer. The request was granted, and Mirei's face appeared on a secure channel. She looked like she was barely holding herself together. "Ambassador," she said, her voice shaking. "We're working on a rescue operation. Admiral Taemin is mobilizing." "No," Hyunwoo said firmly. "Absolutely not, Captain. If Earth acts against the Council's decision, it will undo everything we've worked for. We will be seen as the aggressors. The warmongers we used to be. But sir, that is an order, Captain. I go willingly. The truth will come out eventually. The Drexar have overplayed their hand. When it is revealed, Earth's position will be stronger than ever." Mirei's eyes filled with tears. "They're going to kill you." "I know." Hyunwoo smiled gently. "Remember why we chose peace, Captain. Honor that choice no matter what happens to me. Promise me, I promise," she whispered. The transmission ended. Hyunwoo was taken away in restraints, loaded onto a Drexar transport ship. Captain Mirei watched from her command deck as the ship departed, carrying the man who had taught her everything about diplomacy and honor toward his death. 3 days later, the execution was broadcast across the galaxy. Overlord Carrick stood before the cameras and declared Hyunwoo guilty of crimes against the Drexar people. The ambassador was given one chance to confess. He refused. He was executed by neural disruption, a death designed to be painful and public. Earth watched in silence. Captain Mirei sat in her quarters, her hands shaking so badly she could barely hold the glass of water. Her communication console was flooded with messages from other officers, all asking the same question. What do we do? She had no answer. She had promised Hyunwoo they would honor peace. But as she stared at the black screen where his execution had played out, she felt something dark rising in her chest, something that had been sleeping for a very long time. On Earth, Admiral Taemin stood in the command center watching the same blank screen. Around him, officers waited for orders. The room was so quiet he could hear his own heartbeat. Finally, he spoke. One word, barely a whisper, but it carried the weight of 100 years of buried rage. Enough. Part 5. The New Peace. 6 months after the execution of Ambassador Hyunwoo, the Galactic Council chamber looked very different. The old circular arrangement of seats had been replaced with a more structured layout. At the center sat the Security Council, with Earth occupying the newest seat, flanked by the Vren and Lotus on one side, and 2 other major powers on the other. The 7 conspirator species sat in a separate section, marked with monitoring bands that tracked their every communication. Their military forces had been reduced to minimal defensive capabilities. Their weapons programs shut down under the supervision of neutral observers. They had been given a choice: accept these terms or face the same fate as the Drexar. They had chosen survival. Counselor Yuna stood to address the assembly. She had been appointed as Earth's permanent representative, and unlike her predecessor, she did not come asking for cooperation. She came expecting it. Today we formally establish the reformed Galactic Council, she announced. The new charter includes provisions that will prevent another tragedy like Ambassador Hyunwoo's death. Diplomatic immunity is now absolute. No council member can be arrested, tried, or executed by another member species without unanimous consent of the Security Council. Any violation will result in immediate military intervention. She paused, looking around the chamber. Some of you see this as human tyranny. You're wrong. This is human protection. We are ensuring that no species can use council politics to murder peaceful representatives. If that makes us tyrants in your eyes, so be it. We can live with your disapproval. A representative from one of the neutral species stood. Counselor Yuna, does Earth intend to maintain its current military presence indefinitely? Many worlds feel threatened by human forces in orbit. Those forces will remain until we are satisfied that the galaxy understands the new order. Yuna replied. When we see genuine commitment to peace, when we see justice being upheld instead of manipulated, then we can discuss reduction. But understand this, the Damocles network is permanent. Humanity will always have the ability to respond to threats, and we will never again be vulnerable. In the tribunal chamber on a neutral station, Overlord Carrick stood before judges from 5 different species, none of them human. He had been charged with conspiracy, murder, and crimes against peace. The evidence was overwhelming, gathered not just from human intelligence but from the Drexar's own records. General Siak sat in the observation gallery, watching the proceedings. The tribunal had been conducting its work for 3 months, carefully examining every piece of evidence, giving Carrick every opportunity to defend himself. It was the fair trial he had denied Hyunwoo. The head judge, a being from the neutral Quora species, delivered the verdict. Overlord Carrick, this tribunal finds you guilty of all charges. You conspired with other council members to frame and execute Ambassador Hyunwoo, knowing he was innocent. You did this for political gain, to remove an obstacle to your territorial ambitions. Your actions triggered a war that cost hundreds of thousands of lives. Carrick stood silent, accepting the judgment. However, the judge continued, this tribunal also recognizes that you have cooperated fully with investigators, providing information about other conspirators. You have expressed genuine remorse for the consequences of your actions, if not the actions themselves. Therefore, we sentence you to life imprisonment rather than execution. You will spend the remainder of your life watching the peace you tried to destroy being maintained by the very species you sought to diminish. Siak nodded slowly. It was a fair sentence. Carrick would live, but he would live with his failure. That was its own kind of justice. On the Drexar homeworld, now under Earth's protectorate status, Commander Nari walked through the streets of the capital. Human forces had been here for 6 months and the situation had stabilized. The initial occupation had been tense, but humanity had been careful to respect Drexar civilians, focusing only on military targets and corrupt officials. A young Drexar approached her cautiously. Commander, may I speak with you? Nari stopped. Of course. What's your name? I am Vec, I wanted to say. Not all of us supported what Overlord Carrick did. Many of us respected Ambassador Hyunwoo. His diplomatic work helped my colony avoid a war with the Vren 10 years ago. I was angry when I heard he was executed. Nari felt something in her chest loosen. Thank you for telling me that. It helps to know that not everyone supported what happened. Will your people stay here forever? Vec asked. No. Once your people establish a new government, one that respects the rule of law, we'll leave. Earth doesn't want to be an occupation force. We just want to make sure that what happened to Ambassador Hyunwoo never happens again. I hope we can earn your trust, Vec said. Not all of my people are like Carrick. I hope so too, Nari replied. We're all trying to build something better. Captain Mirai stood in what had been Ambassador Hyunwoo's office on Earth. It had been preserved exactly as he left it, and now it was being converted into a memorial. Personal items, his journals, recordings of his speeches. Future generations would come here to remember the man who had died for peace. Director Jiwon joined her. The President wants to offer you a promotion. Fleet Admiral, command of all Earth forces. I'll refuse, Mirai said quietly. I'm retiring from military service, Jiwon raised an eyebrow. You're one of our best officers. Why retire now? Because I'm going to follow in Hyunwoo's footsteps. I'm accepting a position in the diplomatic corps. Someone needs to rebuild the bridges we burned, and I feel like I owe him that. He would have liked that, Jiwon said, though he might have preferred we never burned them in the first place. He would have, but he also would have understood why we did. Mirai touched the edge of Hyunwoo's desk. He wrote in his journal that the choice matters more than the instinct. We chose violence when we had to, but now we can choose peace again. That's what makes us different from species like the Drexar. Admiral Taemin, now retired, stood in front of the memorial statue of Ambassador Hyunwoo. The statue showed him as he had been in life, calm, dignified, with kind eyes and a gentle smile. The inscription at the base read in every galactic language, "He gave his life for peace." We honored his memory with justice. A reporter approached him. "Admiral Taman, now that the war is over, do you have any regrets about how Earth responded?" Taman thought carefully before answering. "I regret that we had to respond at all. I regret that Ambassador Hyunwoo is dead. I regret every life lost in the war. But do I regret defending our people? No. Do I regret showing the galaxy that humanity cannot be pushed around? No, we tried peace for 73 years. When that peace was violated, we defended it with force. I would make the same choice again. Some species are calling Earth the new tyrant of the galaxy. Let them," Taman said. "We're not trying to conquer anyone. We're not demanding tribute or territory. We're simply ensuring that no one can murder our people without consequences. If that makes us tyrants, then the word has lost its meaning." The memorial was dedicated on the 1-year anniversary of Hyunwoo's death. Representatives from across the galaxy attended, including several from the Drexar sovereignty's new government. They laid flowers at the base of the statue, a human custom that had spread to other species. Captain Mirai, now Ambassador Mirai, gave a speech. Ambassador Hyunwoo spent his life building bridges between species. He believed that we could choose to be better than our worst instincts. For 73 years, humanity proved him right. When he was murdered, we proved him right again in a different way. We showed that we could unleash terrible violence when necessary, but we could also choose to stop, to rebuild, to try again. She looked at the assembled representatives. The galaxy is different now. We have peace, but it's a harder peace than before. It's a peace enforced by strength rather than just good intentions. Some of you resent that. I understand. But ask yourselves, would you rather have the old peace where the strong could murder the weak with impunity? Or this new peace where everyone knows there will be consequences? No one answered, but the silence spoke volumes. Specialist Junho, now teaching at Earth's military academy, addressed his students in a classroom overlooking the Pacific Ocean. The war against the Drexar taught us many things. The most important is that peace is not weakness. When humans chose to stop fighting each other and join the galaxy peacefully, it wasn't because we forgot how to fight. It was because we understood the cost of fighting. A student raised her hand. "Sir, do you think we'll have to fight again?" "I hope not," Junho said honestly. "But humanity now carries a responsibility. We're the strongest military power in the galaxy. That means we have to be very careful about when and how we use that power." Ambassador Hyunwoo understood that. He spent his life trying to solve problems without violence. We should honor him by doing the same, except when we have no other choice. The memorial ceremony concluded with a moment of silence. Every human ship in the galaxy, thousands of vessels spread across hundreds of systems, powered down their weapons and engines for 60 seconds. The galaxy watched as humanity's military might went silent, a reminder that they chose peace whenever possible. On Earth, in the city where Hyunwoo had been born, his family gathered at the memorial. Part 2. The unshackling 48 hours after the execution, the United Earth government called an emergency session. Representatives from every nation gathered in Geneva, their faces grim. The entire planet had watched Ambassador Hyunwoo die, and now the world waited to see how their leaders would respond. The president stood before the assembly. She was a woman in her 60s, her hair white, her expression unreadable. She had served in the last human war as a young soldier, back when humanity nearly destroyed itself. She remembered what humans were capable of when they stopped holding back. "The Galactic Council has shown us who they are," she began, her voice steady. "They have shown us that our decades of peace mean nothing, that our efforts to build bridges mean nothing, that the life of our best diplomat means nothing." The chamber was silent. "We have spent 73 years trying to be better than we were. We buried our weapons. We turned our warriors into peacekeepers. We chose words over war every single time." She paused. "They have reminded us why we needed those weapons in the first place." In the back of the chamber, Director Jiwon stood watching. She ran Earth's intelligence division, and she had been preparing for this moment for 20 years. While humanity played the role of peaceful diplomats, she had been quietly studying every species in the galaxy, their military capabilities, their weaknesses, their fears. She knew exactly how to hurt them. The president continued. "I am formally withdrawing Earth from the Galactic Council effective immediately. We will no longer pretend that body represents justice or peace. We will no longer submit to their authority. Murmurs spread through the chamber, but no one objected. Furthermore, the president said, "I am authorizing the activation of the Genesis protocols." The murmurs stopped. Everyone knew what that meant. The Genesis protocols were the classified military programs humanity had developed in secret, insurance policies against the day when peace failed. Weapons and strategies that the galaxy had never seen, hidden away and waiting. The day had come. Admiral Taman stood in Earth Command, surrounded by holographic displays showing the entire solar system. Ships were moving into position. Platforms that had floated dormant for decades suddenly came online, their power signatures blazing across sensors. Shipyards in the asteroid belt opened their hidden sections, revealing vessels that should not exist. A junior officer approached him nervously. "Sir, the Council is demanding an explanation for our military movements. They're threatening sanctions." Taman did not look away from the displays. "Tell them we don't recognize their authority anymore. Tell them they made their choice when they murdered our ambassador." "Sir, they're saying if we take any aggressive action." "We're not taking aggressive action," Taman interrupted. "We're preparing to deliver justice." "There's a difference." On the lunar base, Captain Mireille walked through the hangar bay of her new command. The ship was called Hyunwoo's Resolve, and it was the most advanced warship humanity had ever built. It had been constructed in secret over 15 years, using technology that Earth scientists had developed but never shared with the galaxy. The ship was beautiful and terrible. Sleek black hull, weapon systems that could crack planets, shields that bent space itself. It was everything Ambassador Hyunwoo had stood against, and it carried his name because humanity would not forget why it existed. Mireille stood on the bridge, her hand resting on the captain's chair. She thought about her promise to Hyunwoo. She had sworn to honor peace. But what was peace worth if it allowed innocent people to be murdered? What was honor worth if it meant doing nothing while evil went unpunished? She sat down in the chair. Around her, the crew took their positions. These were not the peacekeepers of the past decades. These were the children and grandchildren of warriors trained in secret, ready for a war they had always known might come. "All stations, report," Mireille commanded. One by one, the crew confirmed readiness. Weapons hot, engines online, shields at full power. "Course plotted for Drexar space," the navigator said. Mireille took a deep breath. This was the moment. Once they left Earth's orbit, there would be no going back. Humanity would be at war with the galaxy's fourth largest empire. Blood would spill across the stars. She thought of Hyunwoo's last words. "Remember why we chose peace." "I remember, teacher," she whispered. "But they chose war." She raised her voice. "All ships, this is Captain Mireille. Today we depart for Drexar space. We go not as conquerors, but as those seeking justice for a murdered peacemaker. We go to remind the galaxy that humanity chose peace, but we never forgot how to fight. All vessels, prepare for jump." 20,000 warships moved as one. They had been gathering from across the solar system, pulling crews from retirement, activating reserves, bringing online every vessel Earth had hidden away. The galaxy thought humanity had maybe 3,000 military ships. They were wrong by an order of magnitude. Director Jiwon watched the fleet depart from her office in Geneva. On her desk lay folders containing detailed information about every species that had voted to execute Hyunwoo. She knew their trade routes, their military bases, their defensive capabilities. More importantly, she knew their secrets, the corrupt officials, the hidden weapons programs, the treaties they had broken. When this war was over, those files would be made public. The galaxy would see exactly what kind of species sat on the council, passing judgment on others. Her assistant entered. "Director, we're receiving communications from several council species. They're asking us to reconsider." "Let me guess," Jiwon said coldly. "Not the ones who voted to kill Hyunwoo. Just their allies worried about what comes next." "Yes, ma'am. The Vren and Lotus specifically. They're saying they want to help mediate. Tell them it's too late for mediation. They had their chance to stand with us. They abstained." Jiwon stood and looked out the window at the stars. They'll have another chance to choose sides soon enough. We'll see if they're smarter the second time. Across Earth, factories roared to life. Humanity had maintained a massive industrial base, claiming it was for peaceful purposes. Building stations, mining asteroids, constructing habitats. All true, but not the whole truth. Those same factories could produce weapons, and now they did so around the clock. General Siok walked through one such facility, watching machines assemble missiles by the thousands. He was a massive man, scarred from the last human war, and he had spent his entire life training soldiers for a conflict he hoped would never come. Now it had. A factory supervisor approached. "General, we're exceeding production quotas by 40%. At this rate, we'll have enough ordnance to sustain a 5-year campaign." "Good," Siok said. "But we won't need 5 years. The Drexar don't know what's coming. Neither does the rest of the galaxy. Sir, if I may ask, are we really going to war over one man?" Siok stopped walking and turned to face the supervisor. "We're not going to war over one man. We're going to war because they thought they could murder one of us without consequences, because they thought our peace made us weak, because they need to learn that humanity's kindness is a choice, not a limitation." He started walking again. "Make sure every missile is perfect, every weapon flawless. When we're done, I want the galaxy to understand that we chose peace for their sake, not ours." Back on Hyunwoo's resolve, Captain Mirai stood in her ready room, holding the ambassador's personal journal. She had retrieved it from his office on Earth before departing. The last entry was dated the day before his arrest. "Some days I fear we have not changed as much as we claim. I see the way our young officers look at other species, the way they calculate threats and advantages. We teach them to be peacekeepers, but underneath they are still warriors. Perhaps that is unavoidable. Perhaps the best we can do is choose every day to be kind instead of cruel, to build instead of destroy. I hope I have taught them that the choice matters more than the instinct." Mirai closed the journal. "You taught us, teacher. You taught us that choice matters. And today we choose justice." The fleet jumped to faster than light speed, leaving Earth behind. As they traveled through the darkness between stars, every crew member knew they were crossing a line that could not be uncrossed. Humanity had been at peace for nearly a century. That peace was ending. Admiral Taman received reports as the fleet made progress. No interference from other species. The council was still debating what to do, paralyzed by bureaucracy and politics. Good. By the time they decided on a response, it would be far too late. He opened a secure channel to all ships. "This is Admiral Taman. In 6 hours we will arrive at the Drexar border. They will demand we turn back. We will not. They will threaten war. We will give it to them. Remember what we fight for. Remember Ambassador Hyunwoo, who spent his life building peace. We honor his memory not with words, but with justice. Earth stands with you. Humanity stands with you. Make us proud." The channel closed. Taman sat back in his chair, feeling the weight of command settle over him. He was about to start the first interstellar war humanity had fought since joining the galaxy. Future generations would judge him for this decision. Let them judge, he thought. At least they'll be alive to do it, because we made sure the galaxy knows humanity protects its own. Part 3. The Drexar Awakening Overlord. Carrick stood in the command center of the Drexar homeworld, watching the tactical display with satisfaction. His plan had worked perfectly. The human ambassador was dead, Earth's influence in the council was shattered, and his sovereignty was already claiming systems that had been blocked by human diplomacy for years. "Overlord," an officer reported, "our scouts are detecting an approaching fleet. Origin point is the Sol system." Carrick turned slowly. "How many ships?" "Initial count shows approximately 20,000 vessels." The command center went quiet. 20,000. That was impossible. Earth's registered military force was barely 3,000 ships, and most of those were patrol craft and defensive platforms. This had to be a sensor error. "Confirm those numbers," Carrick ordered. The officer worked frantically at his console. "Confirmed, Overlord. 20,000 ships, all military grade. They're on a direct course for our border." Carrick felt something cold move through his chest. For the first time in his long military career, he felt uncertainty. "What are they doing?" "Unknown, Overlord. They're not responding to hails. They're just coming." Carrick activated the Sovereignty's emergency defense protocols. Fleet elements across a dozen systems received orders to converge at the border. If the humans wanted war, they would find the Drexar ready. His species had conquered 40 systems through military might. They would not be intimidated by apes who had spent a century playing diplomat. But deep down, in a place he would not acknowledge, Carrick wondered if executing the ambassador had been a mistake. Captain Mirai stood on the bridge of Hyunwoo's Resolve as the fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel. The Drexar border station hung in space ahead of them, surrounded by a defensive fleet of 2,000 ships. It was an impressive force, but it was nothing compared to what Earth had brought. "Captain," the communications officer said, "the Drexar are demanding we halt and explain our presence." "No response," Mirai said calmly. "Continue approach." The Drexar fleet moved into battle formation, their weapons powering up. Mirai watched them with cold calculation. They still thought this would be a conventional battle. They had no idea what was about to happen. "All ships," she transmitted across the fleet channel, "weapons free. Show them what humanity has learned." Commander Nari sat in the cockpit of her fighter, one of 300 launched from the carrier ships. Her craft was small, barely 15 meters long, but it was more advanced than anything the galaxy had seen. The control interface was linked directly to her neural implants, letting her think her ship through maneuvers that would kill a normal pilot. "Shadow Squadron, engage," she ordered. The fighters accelerated to speeds that should have been impossible for craft their size. They wove through space like schools of fish, moving in perfect coordination. The Drexar fleet tried to track them with targeting systems, but the fighters were too fast, too unpredictable. Nari selected her first target, a Drexar battlecruiser. She triggered her weapons and quantum displacement missiles launched from her craft. The missiles didn't travel through normal space. They flickered in and out of reality, bypassing shields entirely, and detonated inside the battlecruiser's hull. The ship tore itself apart from within. All around her, Shadow Squadron was doing the same. 300 fighters engaged 2,000 capital ships, and the fighters were winning. On Hyunwoo's Resolve, Specialist Junho worked at his cyber warfare station, while the physical battle raged outside. He was fighting a different kind of war. His fingers danced across holographic keyboards as he infiltrated the Drexar military network. The Drexar had good security. He would give them that. But humanity had spent decades developing cyber warfare tools, specifically for this scenario. Junho deployed viral programs that spread through the enemy network like wildfire, corrupting data, falsifying sensor readings, and redirecting communications. Within 10 minutes, the Drexar fleet was blind. Their ships couldn't talk to each other. Sensors showed false targets. Some vessels received orders to fire on their own allies. Chaos erupted in the Drexar formation. "Specialist Junho," Captain Mirai said, "can you broadcast a message through their network?" "Yes, Captain." "What message?" Mirai's face was hard as stone. "Tell them this is for Ambassador Hyunwoo. Tell them humanity does not forget. Tell them they should have left us in peace." The message went out across every Drexar communication channel. Every ship, every station, every military base received it simultaneously. And then the real attack began. Earth's main battle fleet opened fire. Their weapons were unlike anything the Drexar had encountered. Kinetic slugs accelerated to near light speed, hitting with the force of nuclear explosions. Energy beams that cut through shields like they weren't there. Nanite swarms that dissolved hull plating and turned it into more nanites. And the psychological warfare broadcasts. Junho had loaded specific frequency patterns into the attack, sounds and images that triggered fear responses in Drexar biology. It wasn't magic, just very careful study of their neural patterns. The broadcasts made Drexar crews panic, made them see threats that weren't there, made them abandon their posts and flee. The border defense fleet lasted 6 hours. Out of 2,000 ships, fewer than 300 escaped. Overlord Carix watched the destruction from his command center, his scaled hands gripping the edge of the tactical display. This was not possible. Earth had been a peaceful species for nearly a century. They were diplomats, not warriors. "Overlord," an officer said, his voice shaking. "Our border fleet is destroyed. The human force is continuing into sovereignty space. Multiple fleets are moving to intercept, but what?" Carix demanded. "Sir, they're not fighting like we expected. Their technology, it's decades ahead of ours. Their tactics, they're not trying to capture territory or establish supply lines. They're just destroying everything in their path." Carix pulled up the battle reports. What he saw made his blood run cold. The humans weren't behaving like a species fighting for political goals. They were behaving like predators eliminating a threat. No negotiations. "No mercy, no prisoners. Contact the Galactic Council," Carix ordered. "Request immediate military assistance. Tell them the humans have declared total war." But the council was paralyzed by debate. Some species wanted to help the Drexar, seeing the human attack as dangerous aggression. Others remembered that the Drexar had executed a peaceful ambassador and decided this was not their problem. The Council argued while Earth's fleet advanced. Commander Nari led her squadron deeper into Drexar space. They had been fighting continuously for 14 hours and she had lost only 3 pilots. The Drexar had lost hundreds of ships. It wasn't a battle. It was an extermination. She thought about Ambassador Hyunwoo sometimes during the brief moments between engagements. She had met him once years ago at a ceremony honoring peacekeepers. He had been kind to her, asking about her family, her hopes for the future. He had seemed genuinely interested in her as a person, not just as a soldier. Now she was avenging him by killing thousands of beings who had probably never met him, who maybe didn't even support his execution. It felt wrong and right at the same time. "Commander," her wingman called, "we have a Drexar diplomatic vessel approaching under white flag. They're requesting to speak with our command." Nari checked her tactical display. The diplomatic ship was small, unarmed, broadcasting peace signals on every frequency. "Forward the request to Captain Mireille. This is above my pay grade." On Hyunwoo's resolve, Mireille received the request. A Drexar diplomat wanted to negotiate, to discuss terms for a ceasefire. She felt a bitter laugh building in her chest. Now they wanted to talk. Now they wanted diplomacy. "Denied," she said. "No negotiations. Tell them they had their chance for peace when they arrested Ambassador Hyunwoo. They made their choice." "Captain," her first officer said quietly, "that's a diplomatic vessel. Firing on it would violate—" "I'm not firing on it," Mireille interrupted. "I'm ignoring it. Let them go back to their overlord and tell him humanity doesn't negotiate with murderers." The diplomatic vessel retreated. Its mission failed. The message was clear. Earth would accept nothing less than total victory. General Siak arrived with the second wave of forces, bringing additional fleets and ground assault forces. While the naval battle continued in space, he prepared for planetary operations. If the Drexar wouldn't surrender, Earth would take their worlds by force. He briefed his officers in the troop transport. "The Drexar are discovering what happens when you awaken something that should have stayed sleeping. Humanity didn't forget how to fight. We just chose not to. They took that choice away from us." A young officer raised her hand. "Sir, what are the rules of engagement for civilian populations?" "We are not targeting civilians," Siok said firmly. "We are soldiers, not monsters. Military targets only. Anyone who violates that order will answer to me personally." He paused. "But understand this. The Drexar military has integrated itself into every level of their society. Their factories, their shipyards, their resource centers. We will dismantle their ability to make war, and that will hurt their economy badly. That's war. It's ugly, but it's justice." Back on the homeworld, Overlord Carrick's received worse and worse reports. 4 battle groups destroyed. Part 4. Galactic Reckoning. The Galactic Council chamber had never been so tense. Representatives from 42 worlds watched the tactical displays showing the systematic destruction of the Drexar sovereignty. In just 14 days, humanity had reduced the galaxy's 4th largest empire to rubble. Their military was shattered. Their shipyards were silent. Their proud fleets floated as debris fields across a dozen systems. Counselor Yuna stood in the human delegation's space, and she was not the gentle diplomat they were used to. She was tall and sharp-eyed, with the bearing of someone who had spent time in uniform. She had been Earth's chief prosecutor before being assigned to the council. And she approached this chamber the way she approached a courtroom, with evidence and no mercy. "Counselors," she began, her voice cutting through the nervous murmurs, "I come before you not to ask for anything, but to inform you of what Earth has discovered during our operations in Drexar space." She activated a holographic display. Documents appeared, thousands of them, all classified council communications. "These are internal messages between the Drexar sovereignty and 7 other council species. They detail a conspiracy to remove human influence from council politics by any means necessary." The chamber erupted in protests. Representatives demanded to know how Earth had obtained classified documents. Yuna simply raised her voice over the noise. "We obtained them the same way we obtained everything else in the last 2 weeks. We took them. These documents prove that Ambassador Hyunwoo's execution was not justice. It was assassination, planned by multiple council members who saw humanity's peace as a threat to their own ambitions." She pointed to specific representatives as she read names. The Drexar, obviously, but also the Krenth Union, the Tolan Republic, the Veska Hegemony, and 3 others. You conspired together to frame and murder a peacekeeper because he was too effective at his job. One of the accused representatives stood, his translator rendering his angry clicks into words. This is an outrage. We will not stand here and be accused by warmongers who have violated every principle of council law. Sit down, Una said coldly. Or I will release every other piece of information we've gathered about your government, including the weapons programs you're running in violation of council treaties, and the slave colonies you maintain in the outer territories. The representative sat down, his body language betraying his fear. Una continued, Earth demands formal apologies from each conspirator species, delivered publicly and recorded. We demand reparations not for ourselves, but to establish a memorial fund in Ambassador Hyunwoo's name, dedicated to supporting actual peace efforts across the galaxy. And we demand that all 7 conspirator species submit to external oversight of their military programs for the next 50 years. Absolutely not, another representative declared. The Council will never agree to such terms. You may have defeated the Drexar, but you cannot threaten the entire Council. Una smiled, and it was not a kind expression. Can't we? Director Jiwon, if you would. A new holographic display appeared, this one showing orbital positions around every major Council world. Hundreds of red dots appeared, marking weapons platforms that had been hidden in high orbit for decades. We call it the Damocles Network, Una explained. Each platform carries enough firepower to devastate a planetary surface. They've been in position since humanity joined the Council, updated and maintained by stealth ships you never detected. We could have conquered the galaxy at any time. We chose not to. The chamber fell silent. Every representative was staring at the display, counting the platforms near their homeworlds, calculating how utterly vulnerable they had been all along. You've been living under human guns for 70 years, Una continued. We never pulled the trigger because we believed in peace. You repaid that belief by murdering the man who represented everything we tried to become. So yes, Counselor, we can threaten the entire Council. The question is, will you force us to? Admiral Taman watched the Council session from Earth Command. Beside him, Director Jiwon allowed herself a small smile. They looked terrified, she observed. Good, Taman replied. Fear might teach them what respect couldn't. Some of them will want to fight, the Krenth especially. Their military culture won't allow them to submit to human oversight. Then we'll deal with the Krenth, Taman said simply, and anyone else who needs a lesson. On the Drexar homeworld, General Shock walked through the captured capital city. His forces had taken it in 72 hours with minimal casualties on both sides. The Drexar military had collapsed not because they were cowards, but because they had realized continued resistance would only lead to more destruction. Overlord Carrix had been found in his command bunker, surrounded by dead officers. They had taken poison rather than face capture. Carrix had not joined them. He sat in his chair waiting when human soldiers breached the bunker. Now he stood in a holding cell waiting for whatever came next. Seok visited him there. I want you to understand something, Seok said, looking at the Overlord through the energy barrier. We didn't do this because we enjoy war. We did this because you forced us to remember what we're capable of when we're threatened. Carrix looked up at him. I understand now. Your species is not peaceful. You are predators who learned to restrain yourselves. I removed that restraint. Yes, and now the galaxy will have to live with the consequences. Seok turned to leave, then paused. You'll stand trial, Overlord. Not in a Drexar court with a predetermined outcome. In a neutral tribunal with actual justice. You'll have the thing you denied Ambassador Hyunwoo. A fair chance to defend yourself. Why? Carrix asked. Why give me that courtesy? Because we're trying to be better than you, Seok said. Even now. Back on Hyunwoo's resolve, Captain Mirai sat in her ready room reading through casualty reports. The Drexar had lost hundreds of thousands in the war. Earth had lost 3,000 personnel. The numbers should have felt like victory, but they just felt hollow. Her first officer entered. Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the Vren Collective and Lotus Empire. They're requesting a meeting. What do they want? They say they want to help broker a peace. They're offering to mediate between Earth and the Council. Mirai laughed bitterly. Now they want to mediate. Where were they when Hyunwoo needed mediation? They abstained. They watched him die and did nothing. Captain, with respect, Isn't this what Ambassador Hyunwoo would have wanted? Dialogue instead of more war? Mirai set down the reports. The officer was right, and she knew it. Hyunwoo had spent his life building bridges. He would not want his death to burn every bridge humanity had built. Tell them I'll meet with them, she said finally. But make it clear, Earth is not asking for peace. We're dictating terms. If they can't accept that, they can leave. The meeting took place on a neutral station. Representatives from the Vren and Lotus arrived nervous, uncertain how Earth would treat them. Mirai met them in a conference room with Director Jiwan attending remotely. The Vren ambassador spoke first, his mandibles clicking nervously. Captain Mirai, we want to express our regret for what happened to Ambassador Hyunwoo. We should have stood with Earth. Yes, you should have, Mirai said bluntly, but you didn't. You were afraid of the Drexer, so you let them murder our ambassador. Now you're afraid of us, so you want to make peace. Fear is a terrible foundation for diplomacy. The Lotus representative chimed in, her crystalline form shifting colors to indicate distress. We understand your anger. We deserve it. But please, Captain, consider what continued war will cost, not just in lives, but in the future of galactic civilization. The future? Mirai felt her anger rising. Ambassador Hyunwoo was the future. He represented everything we could be if we chose cooperation over conflict. You let that future die because you were too afraid to fight for it. Director Jiwan's voice came through the speakers. Captain, if I may, while we cannot forgive what happened, we can choose what comes next. Ambassador Hyunwoo believed in redemption. Perhaps we can honor his memory by allowing these species a chance to earn back our trust. Mirai took a deep breath. Fine, here are Earth's terms. The 7 conspirator species will be demilitarized and placed under council oversight. The Drexar sovereignty will become a protectorate, with Earth forces maintaining order until a new government is established. The Galactic Council will be reformed with new laws protecting diplomatic immunity absolutely. And Earth takes a permanent Security Council seat with veto power. The Council will never agree to, the Vren ambassador began. The Council will agree, Jiwan interrupted. Or we will dismantle it and build something new. We have the military power, we have the moral authority, and we have evidence of corruption and conspiracy that will destroy the reputations of half the species in that chamber. So yes, they will agree. The negotiations took 3 days. In the end, the Council accepted Earth's terms. They had no real choice. Humanity had proven they could destroy any opposition, and unlike the Drexar, they were offering a path forward that didn't end in total annihilation. On Earth, people gathered in cities around the world to watch the signing ceremony. It was broadcast across the galaxy, just like Hyunwoo's execution had been, but this time the message was different.